Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 10th episode of the Mojoverse Podcast. I'm Mo.
And this is Joe.
And on this episode, we're going to be talking about World of Final Fantasy, the new Yooka Laylee, as well as a couple anime and manga. So let's get started with World of Final Fantasy. What did you think about that?
I was anticipating this game and anxious for it for a really long time. I thought it was cool to do like a compilation of all Final Fantasy games. The art is adorable, the animation is adorable. There are some anime type cutscenes that are a bit jarring, but it's fun because it adds to the story and the characters. This game is like a monster collecting game, which are always my favorite, and it's Final Fantasy monsters that you get to collect at that. You know, like the bomb monsters or the behemoths or chocobos, cactuars, moogles. As for the gameplay, what you can do with stacking gives you more strategy to think about, but I don't think it's really necessary to have two types where you switch from miniature and then your regular size. So if you're miniature, you get one monster can sit on your head and while you stand on another. If you're regular size, you get two small and medium sized monsters.
It really does overcomplicate itself a lot, but I guess if you're trying to have Bahamut and you can't be your regular size and then ride on his head, that would just look too weird, but
I get the idea. I think they could have just chosen one and went with that. But it is kind of fun in a way because you get to bring more monsters that way with you to each level. So
and there's something just awesome about it, just riding on Ifrit's back or something, and then having
he holds you in his hand.
Oh yeah, that's right. And then you have like a little cactuar on your head or something. It's just awesome.
Yeah. Also, with the stacking mechanic, if you have two characters that have the fire type magic, like this is just with your magic attacks, then if you have two fires, you get fire. So that's another fun strategy you can play around with all your element type monsters.
Yeah, that's a neat way of doing it. Instead of leveling up your moves and whatever, you got to catch different monsters to get the upgraded magic. It was pretty cool.
And all the monsters do level up too. Yeah. Like, I think, like, a bomb will be a giant bomb, and that's a little more boring. But there are, like, they've done miniature versions of all the Aeons as well. So you'll have, like, little baby Ifrit, and then it becomes a big Ifrit, and the one that we know.
They've really done the cute very well in this game, right? Even, like, the little miniature little characters, like Lightning and Cloud and Yuna and that kind of stuff, right? They're really kind of going into the cute realm a lot more, and they're doing it very successfully too.
Yeah, and for some reason, and I just found this really funny, all the villagers or NPCs that you talk to, they all have something on their head. Just like everybody walks around with stuff on their head. Like a basket or like a random fish. Yeah,
I love the fish. People just walking around with fish on their heads.
Yeah. The only thing that I'll say that I really don't like about this game is the dialogue. It's terrible. It's so bad. Normally I love talking to everyone and I love watching scenes just because, Square Enix usually gets the dialogue really perfect, but the jokes here are really lame. Like, I don't like anyone. Well, really, there's only like a couple characters that follow you around anyway, so there's not really many people to talk to. And I think they were trying to gear this towards a younger audience. Like, just because it's cute doesn't mean it should be for little kids.
Yeah. They're trying to, I think, get a younger audience into Final Fantasy. If you can introduce them to the characters a little bit, maybe they're going to go back and play them. But I think they went a little too young. The gameplay's
a little confusing anyway. Yeah. It's a little much for younger kids.
I think a lot of the things that we kind of inherently knew because of playing Final Fantasy, I don't think somebody would know that coming into it. Right, they would have to do a lot of reading, and there's not really a lot of tutorials either. So, I don't know. It's like they're doing a regular Final Fantasy game for people who are a little bit older, but then the dialogue is just so juvenile, and I'm not entirely sure who they're.
But there's nostalgia in there for you. Like, I mean, because they're giving you memorable characters and monsters, it's for people who've already played the older games.
Yeah. But then why do the dialogue so young, right?
Yeah,
it's like they didn't really know who their target audience was for that game.
Other things that you can do in the game is there's a Coliseum type arena. That could be kind of fun because you get to actually catch some monsters in there. as well. I think you come out with some items. I don't think you can gain experience while you're in there. I'm not quite sure. I don't remember. But you can catch some monsters in case you've missed certain ones in certain levels because you're just trying to get to the end of the level, so you didn't get the chance to catch all of them. Then there's the tea room. I'm still not sure what this is. It's just kind of pointless to me. It's just some extra side questing, I guess, that you can do. But you need to use Arma Gems in order to unlock them, and you only get Arma Gems at the end of every boss, so you don't really get that many, and I'm kind of worried about running out because I doubt they gave you just enough to do all of them, and you also need these for summons. And for the amount of work that you do in each side quest, you really get like pointless items as well, like one potion. Why don't you just go buy that?
Yeah. Well, you have to wonder if it's actually worth it, right? What I think is actually really neat about it is you're meeting all these characters, but they're done in the little mini art style with the big head, and
Chibi.
Yeah, there's the chibi. But you're going to towns and stuff with the same names as the towns in the original games, right? They're a little different, but it has kind of the same essence.
I think all they're doing is just using the names.
Yeah,
but that's okay too.
But they go to Besaid, and it's like this weird
at least
port community.
Yeah.
But it's on a beach. It has like that same kind of drawing of the water and the sky and that kind of stuff. So that was pretty cool.
I think they also used a lot of the same voice actors.
They did, yeah,
for the characters, so that was cool too. We haven't finished the story yet, but I think we're pretty much near the end by now. I think we're trying to collect every monster first before we move forward.
But we do that.
I'm not sure where the story is going. There hasn't really been much story except we got to collect all these things to get to the end, and not really sure why. I think they're trying to find their mom or something and regain their memories because they lost their memories for some reason. But there's not... So far, they didn't give away much, and we're already, I don't know, about 20, 30 hours in.
Yeah. It seems that they're putting more emphasis in gameplay over story, which is fine, but it's just not really a Final Fantasy game.
Yeah. And just recently, actually, or about a month ago, they had a free DLC to download Sora because the new Kingdom Hearts 2.8 is out. Mm-hmm. So that was cool. You can use them as a summon. We haven't really had the chance to use summons yet because the boss battles haven't been hard enough for us to freak out and then use a summon, which is a really powerful attack. What
we did, though, since the beginning, we tried to catch every single monster in that area before moving on. So we're overpowered. So we'll get to the final boss and then knock him down in a couple minutes. So... for fun, I think we're just going to use a couple of summons, or maybe have to use them because we're close to the end. Maybe for the final boss we'll have to use them. But we were looking at some of the clips that they do, the little scenes when you summon them, and they're pretty cool. Right? You see Cloud with his mini giant sword and everything. That was really cool.
And in order to not get bored, we do have our favorite stacks, our characters that, we're obviously really high level with and that we're more comfortable using and got a good strategy going. But just to keep it fun, we just switch out and see what other characters do, what other monsters do. So it's fun to always keep changing.
Yeah. Well, all in all, I think it's a really fun game to play. The music's great. It really is your typical Square Enix, Final Fantasy game. The music's awesome. That dialogue just kills me, though. I
kind of ruins it.
Yeah, it's a big detriment to it, but it is still fun.
And that Cactuar voice that they gave him, an old man.
Oh, I kind of like it, actually.
No,
I kind of like it, but we're gonna keep playing it. But it's not an amazing Final Fantasy game by any stretch of the imagination. But it is a fun little veer off from the series. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. So we mentioned on an earlier podcast that we backed the Yooka Laylee project. So a little bit of a background, just to remind you, some developers from Rare, they broke off from Microsoft and they joined together and made a studio called Playtonic Games. So what they wanted to do basically was to do a Banjo and Kazooie game or the next gen consoles, because there really aren't any 3D platformer games where you collect items and all that kind of stuff. So they started a Kickstarter for people who really wanted those old school games. They ended up raising over $2.5 million for the project, right? We helped contribute as well. It's been 2 to 3 years now in the making. They just released it, so we were playing that quite a bit. And I have to say they really did capture the essence of Banjo and Kazooie without copyright
It's
infringement.
pretty much the exact same thing, except they changed what they had to change because Microsoft has the IP of Banjo and Kazooie, the characters.
They've updated the graphics. The moves are similar but different. It's a little bit more seamless in the gameplay. They still kind of use that cartoony color, and they put googly eyes on everything.
They knew exactly what we wanted. Like, they listened to their backers. They listened to exactly what it was that we liked about Banjo. It was the music, the googly eyes, the cheeky dialogue, the memorable characters. It's all really fun games. The gameplay, the mini games, everything's super fun to collect and worthwhile in doing so.
Yeah, they must have put a lot of work into that. For such a small studio, to pull off a game of that scope was really impressive. Like,
I think there are only like 20 people.
Yeah.
And that was at the end.
Yeah, but they put out a lot of things like within the world. We ended up jumping up onto like this ledge, and then we looked out. It was right when we started playing, and it was just the scope of the level was just amazing.
Yeah, not only are the graphics improved, but you were saying all the objects now have a weight to them, and you actually can, pretty much jump on everything. You're not stuck in certain areas.
Yeah, that is something. In Banjo, you would see a ledge that you weren't sure if you could jump on it or not, right? But in this game, they've textured everything. So even if you're not supposed to jump on it, you still can.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
And I like how all the usual items are in the game too, except they just switch things around, like what their purposes are. So instead of collecting 100 musical notes, you have quills instead. But there were also feathers in the Banjo games that you could collect because it was an item that you could use. They also have, instead of now collecting jiggies, you're collecting pages. So it's just pieces of page because the story is that you need to complete a book. It's a rare, magical, special book.
That,
so you gotta find
that they
all
were
its
using
pages.
as a coaster,
Yeah.
I like the sarcasm of it. How it just makes it really fun to play.
I think there's only 5 worlds in this game, which kind of makes me sad because we're already at World 4, and I want the game to be longer because it's that good. But each world is actually pretty big, and you can expand each one, so once you've collected enough pages, you can use some more to make it bigger, and you can reach new areas that you weren't able to reach before and find new things. Also, you can collect a bunch of moves, so instead of that mole guy whose name escapes me at the moment, now you get to find Trousers the snake, and he'll give you special new moves. You kind of have to buy them with the quills that you collect. Same thing with the notes.
Yeah. What is neat about this one, though, they let you pick which moves you want within the level. So if there's three moves to be learned in this level, and you need all 3 to get all the pages, they'll let you pick. So you can say, I'll go do this one first, run around a little bit, and then come back and then pick another one. Right? It's a lot of fun like that. So what we ended up doing,
the mini games are separated out enough where you can choose. You can kind of figure out which one move you need for which, and you can just come back later. Yeah.
And what we ended up doing was going into the level, collecting all the pages we could without learning the moves, and then going to Trousers, and then buying 2 moves sometimes. And then those 2 moves will give us enough pages around the level to buy the 3rd one, right? So it's actually really cool because it adds another dynamic because it's just this massive world in the level that you can really choose what you want to do and in what order you can do it.
And there's also, they bring back kind of like you collect 5 Jinjos throughout each world. In this case, they're ghost writers, which is kind of funny because you're in a book.
Yeah, I thought that was genius.
So they have all the same things like that as well. Also, in every single level, they have a minecart race. They have an old retro arcade minigame. And of course, there's a new character there who can magically transform you into something else, so you transform into something different in each world. My favorite one would have to be in the 3rd world. It's kind of like a Halloween type world again, where you see pumpkins and stuff. It's a marsh. You can change into a group of fish.
Like a school of fish, not one fish, but a school of fish.
Yeah, you're multiple fish, and you're just controlling those.
What I found really funny about that retro arcade was they're always making fun of it, and they're comparing like old school consoles and arcade games to new consoles, and it was really funny. I forget the name, but it's a little dinosaur. And Rextro, yeah. And they talked to him, and he said something. And then if you go to the conversation, talk to him again, he'll say the same thing.
He loses his memory.
The Yooka Laylee, they'll be like, "Oh, that's right, he has no memory," which is just hysterical.
Yeah, that's just part of their cheeky dialogue. I also found it funny how you have a random appearance of Shovel Knight in the expanded first level. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that was weird. Wasn't expecting that, but it was cool. That was actually kind of a hard expanded level to get at, but it's a lot of fun.
They found a way to even incorporate the honeycombs again.
Yeah.
Just not as an item this time, but the main bad guy seems to be he's a bumblebee, and he lives in Ivory Towers.
Yeah. They use the honeycomb design too as decoration. So in Ivory Towers, if you look at the wall, the lights are honeycombs. The platforms are in that shape too. It's really funny. They're being so sarcastic. I think it's great. So all in all, we absolutely love the game. We wish there was more, but hopefully they'll come up with.
They're thinking of making new games. Maybe if this is successful.
Let's hope.
And I'm pretty sure it is.
Oh yeah, because they even they've released it on Steam, so people are playing it that didn't back the project, right?
Yeah,
they're
we
actually
got it
buying
for the
it
PS4,
retail.
but you can get it for everything.
Yeah.
The Switch version is even coming out soon because they're going to be working on that now that that's out.
Yeah, so we'll see. I hope it leads to a whole new franchise. Maybe we can get the banjo games
Yooka
that we
Laylee.
Something like that.
Yeah.
We're going to mess around with the names,
Sure.
but let's hope. Let's hope. So you've been taking in some anime series as well as manga. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
So yeah, I saw the anime series Puella Magi Madoka Magica. It's a little bit hard to... It's a tongue twister there. There's an anime series and there's a movie. I've seen both. So to start with the anime series, don't let the cuteness of this series fool you. This is the most depressing magical girl genre anime that I've ever seen. It really messes with you. I'm not sure I still know everything that's happening because it's kind of deep. The bad guys, I don't know if this is a spoiler, but the bad guys ended up being good and the good guys kind of bad. So there's a lot of suspense and a lot of plot twists in this. I kind of have a hard time saying what the rating for the viewership should be. I think teenagers, not young kids, because the content is so dark and heavy, even though the animation is really cutesy and adorable. A lot of the animation that they switched about sometimes just looked like not 3D but like 2D art. The art was really beautiful. I won't say that there's anything very explicit in this, but I was kind of horrified by the end of it. What did I just see? It's a really unique take on the magical girl genre though, because in here they're going more in depth with what they have to sacrifice, like their lives that they have to sacrifice in order to achieve this greater good. Like they just have to continue on not having a regular life in order to make sure everybody else can have a normal life. They give up their souls. Their lives are no longer their own. They have to battle forever or they risk dying. There's always these enemies that are always going to be about, which are called witches, because there's despair in the world. And there's risk of them becoming that very same evil. They do this to protect people, but they also get granted one wish, I guess, in order to make them want to sacrifice. Yeah, just to make it worth it. So they get granted one wish, but I think they kind of have to be careful with the wording. Like, be careful what you wish for, because it might not turn out the way you even want to. And depending on how powerful their wish is, it's a really important factor in what kind of, or the strength of their magical powers. So this really leads to, tragic ends. Just seeing their struggle. Sometimes you actually just wish that it ends for them, like that they can eventually just die in peace, and peace being the key word because they are suffering throughout. The music that they add in this too also adds like a tone of creepiness to it all. So
it's kind of like they're taking that genre and just expanding the story past when it would usually finish. and then just like what would happen if we just kept going. That's really interesting.
Exactly. It's like a never-ending cycle of this continuing to happen. And they're saying it's because they need to take these emotions that come from them in order to release some sort of energy that'll end up saving the entire planet, because the planet's in need of it, or multiple planets rather. So there's a character that comes from another world in order to harness that energy, because they don't have emotions and humans are the only ones that do, so we're the unique ones.
Okay.
So then I watched the movie. The first part of the movie is actually a recap of the whole series, so it's actually putting it together quite nicely in case you missed something, so I kind of enjoyed seeing a shorter version of it. But then they actually added sort of a sequel to the end of what happens after. I didn't really think it needed something. You didn't really need to add something after, because it ended all right in my opinion, and they just kind of made things worse in this movie, and by worse I mean like it's just more depressing. The beginning, they really start off with not knowing what's going on. It's kind of pointless because they're all kind of dreaming, and they don't know they're dreaming yet, so they're just doing weird things, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on because it doesn't make sense. Some characters that are dead are now alive, but they figure they're in some sort of alternate reality, and then boom, there's your major plot twist once you finally get out of that pointless beginning. Okay. I kind of find they brought the whole story full circle by making reference to, you know, the first episode and kind of replaying it again, but it's an alternate reality. So now the two characters who were in certain positions have now switched places, which I find really interesting.
But does how much does that, you know, discredit the manga, like the anime?
No, it adds to it.
Okay.
Yeah, it adds to it because there's like a kind of yin and yang going on with two characters.
That's the problem I have with like the alternate universe things, is when you're taking all this time to develop this universe and flesh out these characters, and then you go, whoops, it's all different. Is it kind of like that, or do they actually do it well?
I think they do it really well. It really adds, there's one girl who keeps her memory throughout everything, so she knows of the alternate realities. Yeah. Oh, okay. So she keeps track of everything for us, and we can follow everything through her eyes. Okay. And it makes it even more tragic, actually, because she has to she's the one who can restart time. So she keeps changing everything so that it ends up being how she wants it to be, but it keeps messing up for her. She keeps not achieving what she wants to achieve, and that makes it all the more tragic. And other people can't really remember and don't know just how much she's gone through for them. Like, true best friend, and they don't even know it.
Yeah.
That is depressing. What I didn't like about the movie ending, I don't want to spoil it too much, but basically they undid it a little bit of the closure and satisfaction that you got from the anime. This character who was like so good just becomes kind of, I guess her love kind of changes into obsession. Okay. And she becomes a little bit more of like the villain now. And she becomes so upset because at the end of the anime series, one of the characters kind of ascends to godhood because she's just that powerful.
Nice.
She misses her friend because she's never able to be there for them. And she was trying to do something in order to bring people to not really heaven, but to a sort of peace after they die, because that was not available to them, to magical girls before. But now, in her obsession, she wants to keep her friend all to herself, so she's being selfish, and now she kind of ripped her friend from godhood, and there's something going on, and now one's good and one's bad, and they end up fighting each other now, and instead of being best friends, and it's all becoming really sad. Like, there's really a lot of deep emotion going on, but then what happens at the very end confuses me. Like, is there going to be another one, because they kind of allude to that, and like what's going to happen from this point forward, and it doesn't really end. Yeah, I had to look up a few things of what other people thought happened at the end there.
Okay, what just happened? Let me Google it.
Yeah. So that movie's called Rebellion. Both were available on Netflix, actually. So.
Okay.
Next, I'm going to talk about 2 mangas that I've read. One, which is called From Far Away, is actually really, really old. Like, it was written in 2004. I remember reading it somewhere at the library, but I didn't get to finish the whole thing, so I finally got to go back to it, and I just want to review it really quick, because I find it was a really good fantasy adventure romance type manga. A girl gets transported from Earth to another world. She doesn't know that there's actually a legend surrounding her. She gets to find out that a little bit later. But what I find interesting in this one is that she doesn't speak their language. It's not like all of a sudden, they can talk to each other, they know each other's customs. There was actually a lot of learning for her because they speak a different language in this world.
That's a nice little hiccup in the story.
She's having a hard time interacting with people. It kind of makes her all the more cute, though, because, the way she's talking is like a little child. Because she's picking up on some little words as you go.
Because that'd be hard to do in a manga with, like, speech bubbles and stuff, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, they found out a way to, when it's circle, it's like a thought, and when the thought bubble is square, it's because she's speaking in that other language.
Cool.
So I think they did a really good job with that, and it makes the romance a little bit cute too, because there's that language barrier and they're trying to learn from each other. But that makes her all the more admirable, like as a strong character who just doesn't give up. She's learning their language, she's learning their ways. She's not physically strong, which is normal. She's not all of a sudden she knows how to fight and take care of herself. But she's helping out in a lot of other ways because her outlook is so bright. So I thought that was really a likable shoujo female character, because that doesn't always happen. They're either super whiny and useless or, over the top.
Yeah.
So I really recommend this manga to preteens or tweens. It's cute.
Yeah, which is fair because you were younger when you originally read it as well, right? So no, that's perfect. So why don't you tell me a little bit more about Shinobi Life?
Yes,
I know you were reading that one too.
That's the other manga I read. This manga ended up surprising me because I thought it was going to turn out to be a certain way. Like, it's typical high school genre, and I'm starting to get really tired of those. But there's actually a lot of fantasy in it as well because of the ninja aspect. So it's not only about ninjas, but there's more about time travel in this one, and different time periods. I wasn't even aware of this until later. It's not just about ninjas, because they're taking a ninja from a different time period, so it's about time travel as well. One of the characters wasn't even aware it was time travel because he thought his enemies were trying to fool him, so it's a little bit funny seeing him in, the new 21st century trying to adapt to certain things. Yeah. So that's funny. They did that a little bit as well, but what I like even more is when she ends up going into his world. So now we're going into more feudal Japan.
She probably had a bit
area.
of a culture shock, didn't she?
Yes, and now she gets to find out how he felt the other way around. So he ends up meeting this girl, and he thinks that it's his princess from back in his world because they look identical, and he swore to protect her, so now he's just protecting this other girl. She looks the same, she has the same name. We later find out she's just a descendant of that princess in the newer time period.
So I guess genetics doesn't factor in anime, I guess.
Well, yeah, I know there's quite a few generation gaps there, but for some reason they're all pretty similar. So with the time traveling, there's a whole bunch of surprises. Like, with each character, you didn't expect them to be that character or have a relation to certain characters in the new time periods, like when you're looking back at ancestors and descendants and things like that. So there's quite a lot of surprises.
So they kind of tie things together from the different time periods.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Nice. And, the dad's kind of being a jerk at the beginning, but then you find out why he's being overprotective, and dad's got a whole completely different story and outlook to everything.
Nice.
They just keep throwing things in there that do tie in to the beginning. They're not just kind of random.
And they kind of pay off little by little.
Yeah, you start seeing everything start connecting. So they're trying to right some wrongs in the past as they time travel as well. But the time travel is not specific. So I thought that was interesting. They don't know where they're going to end up. So at one time they do lose each other, and they have to kind of just keep jumping in that same time portal and end up in different years. So they kind of come across each other at different ages as well. So, but they have to be careful in order to meet themselves specifically. Like they can see each other, but as long as they're not both looking at each other at one time, because they come across the risk of being erased from existence. So they got to make sure that they don't do too many big ripples, and how that'll affect that could change everything in the past.
It is butterfly effect style time travel.
And could change the future.
Okay.
So that was really interesting. I really recommend this one if people like time travel, fan of ninjas, romance, action, adventure. There's suspense. There's everything in this one, and it's not too explicit, so the manga could be geared towards teens.
Perfect. All right, so that is all the time we have for the 10th episode of the Mojoverse Podcast. You can always follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, and YouTube at Mojoverse Sudbury. The podcast is on iTunes as well as Google Play. Personally, I use an app called Podcast Addict. It's a great app. You can check that out. So thank you, everybody, for listening. My name is Mo.
And this is Joe.
And we'll talk to you next time on the Mojoverse Podcast.